Welcome everybody. Hope you can hear me well out there. I'm welcoming you today to our webinar on mental health in the new working world. This webinar is brought to you today by SafeTrack. For 20 years, SafeTrack has been an online leader in training your staff in your business, specializing in compliance. And with today's webinar, we're encouraging you to participate today, ask your questions as we go using the Zoom tools in the Q&A area, and we'll capture these and look to try and answer them at the end of the session. So if we can continue now through to our presenters. So today we will have our CEO at SafeTrack, Deborah Coram.
Hi everyone.
Hello. And Helen Jamison, our Head of Content and Client Services. Hello, Helen.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Chris.
Thanks for attending.
You're welcome, Chris.
Today, we're going to cover off a couple of points. So we're going to look at what is the new working world and what is our workplace obligations in terms of supporting our staff's mental health. We'll look at mental health in the workplace as well as in the household. And we'll look at ways you can support your staff and the benefits of that for your workplace. We'll look at some practical tips on promoting good mental health. And lastly, we'll finish with what it is as a leader in an organization, how you can set the tone at the top for the rest of your organization. Now, just a quick note, our presenters, nor am I, are mental health experts. So today's presentation is coming from a compliance perspective. So that's our specialty. So that's what our content will focus on today. So I'll hand over firstly to Helen.
Thank you, Chris, and thanks everyone for attending. Happy Friday. So it seems that remote working is here and it's here to stay. So whilst traditionally many employers prefer to have their staff working in the office, COVID-19 has changed all of that. According to a recent PwC survey of executives and office workers, 89% of employers surveyed said that allowing their staff to work remotely long after COVID is not going to be a concern of theirs. And most office workers, around 83% of them, want to work from home for at least one day a week in the future. Internationally, large tech companies such as Google, Facebook and Twitter have also announced that their employees will continue to work from home until at least next summer or even permanently. So with this becoming the new norm, remote work will break traditional office environments and management structures post-COVID. Both commercial and residential real estate needs are going to change. Why need a big office if most of our staff are working from home? And when we can work remotely, we can work anywhere. The 9-to-5 workday will also likely to be challenged to provide more flexibility. And technology will continue to change and adapt to improve remote working structures. However, from a health and safety perspective, obligations extend beyond the office environment for an organisation. If employees are going to be working from home more and more, leaders are going to have to play a much more active role in managing their staff's mental health and well-being remotely. I believe Deb is going to talk more to this in the next few slides, so I'll pass over to her.
So I'm just going to unmute myself. Sorry about that. Look, the purpose of the workplace health and safety laws is to ensure that we eliminate or minimise risks to the health and safety of our workers, regardless of where they may be located. So whether they're in an office or working from a home environment, we as a workplace have a responsibility to ensure their health and well-being, both from a psychological and a physiological perspective. Health within the definition of the workplace health and safety laws has very clearly been made to be defined as psychological as well as physical health. Now, the workplace health and safety laws set out some specific duties to manage the psychological health and safety of our workers, and include that a person conducting a business or a person who has the ability to affect the business outcomes and management of a business has the duty to ensure, and the key words are, as far as reasonably practicable, that workers and other people in the business are not exposed to psychological health and safety risks arising from that business or the business undertaking. This can include being held liable for industrial manslaughter in the event of a suicide that's caused by a workplace stress or conduct, if that outcome is a result of a breach of relevant compliance laws. Now, not all states at this point in time have those industrial manslaughter laws, but 4 now do, including Victoria, which is a recent change. Now, this duty requires that you, as a leader or manager, manage the risks of psychological health and safety arising from the business and undertakes to eliminate the exposure to psychosocial hazards as far as reasonably practicable. And where it's not reasonably practicable to eliminate them, you need to go ahead and minimise those risks as far as is reasonably practicable to do so. And this includes taking reasonable steps to gain an understanding of the psychosocial hazards and risks associated with the operations or business. And that can include those risks that may be in the home if you are asking that person to work from a home environment. It's also useful to keep in mind that workers themselves also have a duty to take reasonable care of their own health and safety and not to adversely affect the health and safety of others. So that means that workers, in the process of doing that, they need to ensure that they are compliant with any reasonable instructions as far as they're reasonably able, and that they cooperate with the reasonable health and safety policies and procedures that are notified to them from time to time. I'd also like to point out that it's not just workplace health and safety laws that we have obligations towards our staff that may impact mental health and wellbeing. Laws arising out of things like anti-bullying, harassment, discrimination, general fair work laws, privacy laws, anything where the breach of those laws could cause extreme stress to a staff member can impact the mental health and wellbeing of a staff. So whilst the undertaking to ensure the wellbeing of somebody's mental health does fall under the workplace health and safety laws, compliance with other laws or lack of compliance with them can actually cause stresses that will create a liability under those workplace health and safety laws. So when we talk about compliance, we're not just talking about compliance with the workplace health and safety laws. So Helen, in terms of the type of mental health issues that we see emanating in the workplace, would you be able to take us through some of those that we do see causing stress to our workers in the workplace?
Sure, thanks for that, Deb. So an employee's mental well-being can be influenced by many factors in the workplace. There's things like too much or even too little work, lack of workplace relationships, poor support or clarity from their leaders, environmental factors, and poor organisation change management. And all of these can be heightened when staff members are working remotely. Exposure to these factors can lead to work-related stress. Now, not all stress is bad. However, when stress is high and prolonged, it can lead to work-related psychological or physical injury, for example, depression or anxiety disorders. Work-related stress has been linked to factors that affect an organisation's reputation and financial standing, such as high staff turnover, poor work or product quality, absenteeism, or employees not fully functioning to the best of their abilities. Figures have shown that around 91% of workers' compensation claims involving a mental health condition were linked to work-related stress or mental stress. Now, mental stress in this context refers to the mechanism of injury described work-related stress in the claims data. The highest mechanism causing mental stress was work pressure, although other factors such as bullying and harassment and occupational violence were also cited. So on that note, Deb, I might throw back to you now to discuss the mental health impacts in the household.
Thanks, Helen. As touched upon at the beginning of this presentation, there are work-based stresses that our workers are currently facing and suffering as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. And even though you may not have specific legal obligations in relation to that stress, you do as a workplace need to take that into account and be able to offer your workers increased support and flexibility as they get through this difficult time. So when we're talking about these type of stresses, it's important to understand that many of the workers who are currently working from home, these stresses then become issues that become part of their work environment. So we need to be very, very careful about ensuring that we are looking after our staff during these difficult times. The type of stresses that we're seeing increases in during the COVID-19 pandemic include financial stress. And this can be from reduced hours, losses of employment, partner or spouses, loss of employment, reduced income. We're talking balancing and caring responsibilities. So when we're trying to get somebody to work and they have children who are trying to homeschool, that balance between ensuring that the children are adequately schooling and helping look after what needs to be printed out or whatever it is that needs to be done to facilitate their learning, whilst also conducting a job, I'm sure we've all become intimately familiar with over these past several months. In fact, if my door opens at any second, don't be surprised. Though I do have a great big sign that said, do not open this door. So usually I'm finding that starting to work. Apparently they've learned to read during this pandemic. So concern for family and friends, where many people are facing a great deal of stress over other family members or loved ones who may be sick, unwell, or just generally they're not able to see them and support them if they are stressed and unwell. And a reduced closure of facilities that generally benefit people's mental well-being, such as gyms, pools, the type of places that yoga, Pilates, the places that people generally go for reduced stress are no longer available to them. In addition to which, especially if you're in Victoria, the ability to go on holidays and leave your home and change your working environment and have a break isn't really available to people right now. So those sort of travel limitations and reduced social interactions mean our ability to actually have stress relief have been significantly reduced. And whilst in Victoria we've been restricted to only 1 hour of exercise a day, the ability to not go and do the usual things is a significant additional stress to our workers. We also have the addition of relationship stress of people, many of whom may not be in happy homes, being forced to live with the people that they may not be happy with. And we've also got situations of domestic violence, and these situations need to be very carefully managed, in that if we are asking a worker to work from home in what is becoming not just a stressful environment, but an unsafe environment, then these can have liabilities upon a business. So these are things that we all really need to be watching out for. And whilst I think it's important to look at these things as we need to watch out for these type of things from a compliance point of view, and we don't want to be liable as a business, I don't believe that that's the attitude that we should take in relation to why we put in place procedures, processes and policies to ensure that we are creating a place that is good for the mental health of our workers. There are many, many benefits to creating a mentally healthy workplace, and these far exceed why we should be doing this from a liability point of view. And I'm going to pass over to Helen, who's going to go into some of the benefits of running a mentally healthy workplace.
Thank you, Deb. So now that we've talked about these other risks, how do we create a mentally healthy workplace? Generally speaking, there are a few factors that all mentally healthy workplaces have in common. They promote workplace practices that support positive mental health. They eliminate and minimise psychological health and safety risks through the identification and assessment of psychosocial hazards. They build the knowledge, skills and capabilities of their workers to be resilient and to thrive at work. Obviously, they'll be free of stigma and discrimination. And lastly, they support the recovery of any workers returning after a physical or psychological injury. So promoting positive mental health at work goes further than focusing solely on eliminating or minimising psychological health and safety risks. Promoting positive mental health focuses on taking a strength-based approach, focusing on opportunities, strengths and resources that help foster a healthy, positive and supportive workplace culture. The benefits of creating one are profound. Workers who feel positive about the environment and culture in their workplace are less likely to experience work-related stress, sustain a psychological injury or leave the workplace, and more likely to have better performance and engage in learning and self-development. In fact, studies show that the return on investment of a mentally healthy workplace can be as high as $2.30 for every $1 invested, which is significant. So on that note, I'll pass back to Deb again to discuss what we can do to manage mental health risks in the workplace. Deb?
Thanks, Hals. The psychological hazards that we're talking about identifying can be managed using the same type of risk management process that we apply for physical hazards. So the WorkSafe Australia has developed a 4-step process for managing psychological injury and intervening early and taking action to prevent workers from becoming ill or sustaining a psychological injury. Now, some of you may be familiar with this diagram. Of course, the whole diagram is surrounded by consultation. So these steps are done in conjunction with permanent and ongoing consultation with our workforce. They are not done in isolation and by ourselves in a room that doesn't involve interaction with our staff. The first involves identifying psychological hazards and risks by, yes, listening to our workers and seeing any items or issues that they can identify, inspecting the workplace, and yes, that might be, if we're asking our staff to work remotely, it may well be their individual homes, and ensuring that we're identifying any risks that they may be exposed to in that home environment. We need to be taking note of how our workers interact. For instance, if we can see a worker suddenly change their behaviour or performance, this can be an indicator to us that somebody is suffering from something that we need to identify and do something about. We need to make sure that we have reviews, reports and records as means of assessing staff's performance. So it may be reaching of KPIs and ensuring that they are reaching the goals in terms of the performance standards that we're asking of them. And that if they are not performing, we need to consider that there may be something wrong with their working life that we need to think about, rather than just simply poor performance or poor for performance's sake. And we often find that utilising surveys as a tool for surveying staff about any issues that they're suffering, and and importantly, a de-identified survey can be a really good way of staff letting us know if they are suffering issues. And we can also do that, let them identify or de-identify depending on the issues that they're suffering. And one of the important things there is the type of workforce we run. Workers are more likely to identify themselves and be associated with that issue in a workplace they trust, and that they feel there will be no repercussions for the identification of those issues. So the relationship between workers and leaders becomes very, very important, having an open workplace where people feel safe to report issues that they may be suffering. Once those items have been identified, we then go on to assess those issues and what sort of risks and hazards that our workers are being exposed to, and need to look at identifying those through a type of a formal assessment process. Once we have assessed what they actually are, we need to go into looking at how we control those risks and, if possible, eliminate them. Elimination, of course, is always the safest option, but it's not always possible. So where it's not possible to eliminate, we need to look to reduce and minimise that risk as much as possible through planning and prevention. We need to look at discussing an individual staff member's issues or a group of issues, and we need to put in place strategies to prioritising staff members' mental health and wellbeing. And once we've put in place those type of controls, we need to look to review them continually. So we need to maintain, monitor and review those control measures on an ongoing basis, and to continually review them to ensure that they remain effective. And we will see this cycle becoming a continuum as we review items, we may identify new risks and we go around this continuum. When we do look to review our control measures, we need to make sure that if they are not working, that we put in place different controls and ensure that the controls that we have in place are effective. And when we do reviews and we identify new issues, we need to ensure that where the new issue is or hazard is identified, that if a control measure is not adequately minimising a risk, we need to make sure we put in place a new control to ensure that that risk is minimised or eliminated. And of course, all of these processes need to be surrounded by a consultation with our workforce and the inclusion of our work health and safety representatives. In terms of ensuring that the support that our staff members are needed is offered, we need to ensure that not only are we going through this assessment process, but that our staff are fully aware of what resources that they have available to them in the event that they are feeling depressed, stressed, anxious, or are having mental health issues. So ideally, we want to ensure that our staff know where resources are and where they're located so that they have easy access to those items. Make sure that our staff are enrolled in mental health and wellbeing training so they know the policies that our organisation has in relation to these issues and what resources are available to them. Any type of ERP services that are available to staff, they need to know where to access them and how to access them so that in the event they are suffering an issue, they've got an easy way to go and assess those. Certainly at SafeTrack, we ensure that all of those sort of resources are set out in a mental health and wellbeing training course that all staff are enrolled in to ensure that they know what the organisation actually offers in relation to support. So, Hals, in general, I'd like to kind of move on for some tips to promoting good mental health in the workplace. Can I pass over to you for that topic?
Of course, Deb. So, general and mental health promotion is the process of enabling people to increase control over and improve their physical and mental health. Health promotion in the workplace refers to the combined efforts of employers, workers, and society to improve the health and well-being of people. This can include focusing on healthy lifestyles, personal development, learning, and non-work-related factors in the general environment. A best practice approach to developing and sustaining a psychologically healthy and safe workplace should focus on both mental illness prevention and mental health promotion. So you're not required under work health and safety law to provide health promotion initiatives. However, well-run initiatives can have really positive effects on general and mental health. These initiatives can help managers and workers better understand physical and mental health and assist in building a supportive workplace culture. When these types of strategies are combined, they can lead to better well-being amongst your workers. They also help workers feel more comfortable in reporting work-related psychosocial hazards and accessing counselling services if issues do arise. Senior management commitment and input from workers is required to ensure these strategies are appropriate and meet specific needs. For more information on integrated approaches to mental health, including the incorporation of health promotion, you can go to any one of the many work health and safety authorities websites, such as Safe Work, and they give really good information on this. Lastly, it's important you don't adopt a health promotion strategy as an alternative to managing the psychological hazards and risks associated with the work undertaken in your organisation. Health promotion can really work in conjunction with a systematic approach. I think the next slide I'm also going to talk to. So here's some different tips that we've put together for promoting good mental health in your workforce. It's important to regularly ask your workers how they're going and if anything is stressing them. This is even sort of almost erring on the side of over-communicating with them, especially if they're working remotely. Here at SafeTrack, all of the managers have a daily call with their staff and constant one-on-one calls with them just to make sure they're all going okay and coping in the environment. Now, workers are distressed about the challenging conditions caused by the pandemic. It's really important that you acknowledge their feelings and don't just blow them off. You need to reassure the workers that they are doing what they can in the circumstances and everybody's in the same boat. You need to stay informed with information from official sources and regularly communicate or share this information with workers. So for instance, here in Victoria, we're still working remotely and probably will be for some time. So it's really important that we always let the staff know what's happening, how long they're going to be in this situation from an organisational point of view. You need to consult with your workers and representatives on any risks to their psychological health and physical health and safety. So have a chat to them, see how they're going, and consult and ask them to provide input as to what anything the organisation can do to better help them and support them. You need to support any innovations to address the psychosocial risks where you reasonably can, and provide workers with a point of contact to discuss their concerns. So this might be yourself as a manager, a senior manager, or the human resources department at your organisation, but make sure that they've got a number of points of contact in case they feel a bit not ready to talk directly to you. Make workplace information available in a central place, as Deb mentioned earlier. So make sure, it's important to have a good intranet or somewhere where people can find information if they need to. Inform workers about their entitlements if they become unfit for work or have caring responsibilities. And that's important so that they know what they can fall back on if they need to, if they do get sick, or if they've got caring responsibilities that they're finding difficult to juggle. You also need to inform workers about their rights under work health and safety laws, including the right to stop work in certain circumstances and the right not to be discriminated against or disadvantaged for raising work health and safety concerns in the workplace. You need to proactively support your workers who you identify to be more at risk from working from home or working remotely. So you need to make sure that if there's anybody in your teams that you think is struggling, that you're in constant contact with them. Again, as I said before, maybe erring on the over communication. And refer workers to appropriate work-related mental health and wellbeing support services, such as employee assistance programs or the coronavirus mental wellbeing support service, if you feel that they need to access those things. So on that note, I will pass back again to Deb to talk about leadership.
Thanks, Helen. Look, I think that many of our workplaces have noticed there's never been a better time for leaders to step up and actually lead in a traditional way, not just about P&L reporting, but about taking care of our staff and helping them manage through this very difficult and oh so strange year we are experiencing. Now, effective management of psychological health and safety risks really starts from having a commitment from our leaders to have a clear and well-documented organisational workplace mental health policy to ensure that we're supporting people working from home and their individual experiences during these times. We have received a question during the seminar today about how exactly do we inspect an individual's workplace when we are working remotely? And the answer to that is that we can do that via video Zooms, and we can do it with the use of survey tools. So whilst you may not be able to go there and physically inspect, we can have checklists, we can have audit tools, we can have question and answer surveys, and we can have Zoom conferences where we can check working environments, and we can literally check in with our people and ask them questions to see how they're going is really the best options that we have at the moment. And ensuring that our leaders and managers are involved in that places gives us the ability to visibly demonstrate and communicate our workplace's commitment to building a mentally healthy workplace. And it shows that it shows to our workers that we value a positive mental health environment, and it's important to us as an organisation. When we start to show that to people, they feel safe and secure. They feel more likely to be able to report incidents or items of concern, and we have a better ability as a workplace to manage and control that issue. So we start to create an environment where honesty and forthrightness gives us the ability to control risk. And whilst that's great from a management perspective, we do also want to ensure that we're creating some type of an auditable trail of our efforts for our workplace obligations requirements. And again, I am no stickler for doing something to check a box, but if we are doing something and it falls under the guise of workplace health and safety obligations, it is really important that we're documenting what we're doing. And due diligence would show that we have a documented process to take reasonable steps to firstly acquire and update our knowledge in relation to work-related psychological health and safety matters, that we understand our organisation's risks in relation to these issues, that we are ensuring appropriate resources and processes to eliminate or manage those risks, and that these are used effectively to manage those risks. We want to ensure that there are appropriate processes for receiving, monitoring and reviewing information such as incidents, hazards and risks, and that we respond to those in a really timely way. We want to ensure that the business has processes that are documented and communicated for complying with our duties or obligations under workplace health and safety laws. And we need to verify our resources and processes are provided to staff and that they're utilised to manage that risk. Now we need, as part of doing this, we need to establish a supportive and positive workplace where the culture really emanates from the top. And you'll hear me talk on many topics, and almost every compliance related matter, I will always say the tone at the top sets the mood in the middle, which creates the buzz at the bottom. So when we create leaders and managers who can visibly communicate a workplace's commitment to building a mentally healthy workplace, it shows our workers that a positive health is important and encourages them to engage in positive practices. If we've got people at the top committing practices that are likely to put people's health and well-being in jeopardy, then that is not going to show a commitment to those practices from the top. And we have seen very recently in a couple of organisations, AMP's been the one in the media lately, where we've seen management involved in practices that were in breach of bullying and harassment laws, but being promoted to a high level. And we've seen that the repercussions of this type of thing really have the ability to have a significant impact on an organisation, and that it really has a brand degrading approach if they're the sort of practices that we as management choose to endorse. So we really want to ensure that we are developing supportive and capable managers that have the skills and knowledge to act in a compliant and supportive manner, who are able to effectively communicate and empower our team and to manage their stress and emotions, as well as to manage difficult situations as they arise. So when we're looking to promote leaders, we need to look at promoting leaders with high levels of EQ, emotional intelligence, as well as IQ. As we've consistently seen that leaders who have got high levels of emotional intelligence are able to better manage issues that arise on a daily basis that may be thrown a curveball, such as the COVID issues and the individual mental stress issues that staff may be suffering. Positive leadership will also look to things such as ensuring that we're implementing workplace policies that adequately support the psychological safety of our workers and our flexible workplace practices. If we can have empathy to our staff and the situations they're in, it means we can be more flexible in the policies that we adjust. An example is a mother or father working from home with young children they need to support. We may want to change their hours to be able to flexibly support them as they support their child through learning, and they may work later hours in the day or different hours in the day, and that enables them to be able to be better focused on their work and the work hours that they are working. We need to make sure that as our leaders practice respectful and dignified workplace interactions, and that ensures that things like bullying and harassment and discrimination are not present in our workplaces, as these are the type of things that can create significant mental health anguish and issues. We need to have management who encourage open, honest and effective communication and consultation. And to this end, I strongly recommend that when you have a workplace working from home, that you have as many touch points as possible with your staff that aren't just shooting off an email or a Teams text. It's about phone communication, video communication, and actually seeing and speaking to workers, because that is when we can start to better identify issues that may arise, and it also helps establish better relationships with those people. No relationship has ever been established via an email or a text message. So we really need those communications to be personal. We need to make sure that we're building organisational awareness and of psychological health and safety issues. And we need to make sure that all of our staff know what those are. They are trained in the issues and the support that they have available of the company, and what our policies, processes and procedures are. And as leaders, we need to model psychological self-care. We need to be the models as to how to manage mental health issues. And that is not even to say that we don't personally suffer from stress and anxiety ourselves, but we may talk about it if we'll do, and we'll set in place processes for what we're going to do about that anguish that we're currently suffering from. And that the honest and communication about it, and if we can lead that way, it encourages all of our staff to act in a similar way. And to that end, in terms of, I mentioned the training of staff, I will run a blatant promotion for our mental health training. We have a new course that we are releasing that should be a course that's available to all of our staff members on understanding and managing your mental health. And then we are releasing a new course next week, which will be largely a lot of the items that we've touched on today, which is mental health obligations for managers in the workplace. So looking at some of the more compliance-based issues that arises around mental health. And as a special offer for those of you who have attended today's seminar, we will bundle both of those courses together, and we'll give you 50% off the second course. You really do need both courses, as they really do go together, and that promotion will be valid for any purchase that's made up to the end of this month. Now, I believe during this session, and even before the session, we did have a number of questions come in, and I'm going to hand back over to Chris, who's going to take us through some of those.
No problem. Thank you, Deb, and thank you, Helen. We have had a number of questions throughout the session, which we've been able to answer as we went, but we do have a few that we'd like to cover off now, especially from our registration period as well. Helen, the first one for you, where's the demarcation between employee privacy and employer responsibility?
Right, thanks, Chris. Yeah, that's an interesting one. So under the Privacy Act, under the Use and Disclosure APP, personal information can be disclosed if it is necessary to lessen or prevent a serious threat to life, health or safety, and if the person consents to it. Now, maybe people would not consent to that, but most states and territories also have specific mental health legislation that enables health information to be disclosed in specified circumstances to ensure that people with mental illness receive effective treatment and care. So for instance, if an employee comes to you in a depressed state and you're concerned that they are in danger, you are able to disclose this information. And should that unfortunate thing happen, you should probably, well, you should not leave the person alone unless you are concerned for your own safety. You can call the person's doctor, a mental health crisis service, or dial 000 and say that the person's life's at risk. And if the person agrees, you could go together to the local hospital emergency department for assessment. So hopefully that covered that one off, Chris.
No problem. Thank you, Helen. The next question I have is, Deb, I'll throw that one over to you. Do you have any tips on supporting remote staff who do not have a home office as they're deployed to work with clients?
It's a good question, Chris. We at SafeTrack have a number of clients that that have completely geographically dispersed staff. So they don't run necessarily offices of people, but for instance, they have teams of in-home care workers who go in and look after people in their homes is one example. And so we're talking about people where we don't necessarily have their day-to-day contact within an office, and increasingly we're seeing us all running remote staff with people working from home. The tips that we have is that compliance applies to people wherever their work environment is. So if somebody, for instance, is in a car, that car almost becomes their working environment. So ensure the person understands things like safe driving, and the compliance regimes that are around that are really, really important. It's also essential that any compliance requirements such as mental health, work health and safety are deployed to them in a way that they can ingest. A recent example that we had was that we actually deployed mobile phones to an entire remote workforce space and had mobile compatible training that was created that was able to sit on a small mobile phone that they could actually do in between appointments in their car, obviously not while they were driving. And they were able to ensure that the training was really able to be ingested well on in that forum, so that we can still disperse. There are still ways to get information, training, resources and assets to people in a remote location. And as a workforce, if you are asking your staff to work remotely, you need to take into account what then becomes their work environment, which might be outside of your control, which of course does make it more difficult. So we need to make sure that people are empowered to know what to do in various different scenarios that they may encounter. And that, yes, is on us as an obligation on our organisation to know what it is that they can do in certain situations. Chris?
Excellent. Thank you, Deb. Thank you, Hels. I do notice that we are quite tight on time, and we've got a couple of extra questions that have come through. So rather than rushing through those, I'm wondering if we just answer those ones offline and send a response to all the attendees in an email format. And that way we can give those two questions the justice they deserve as well. So we might just leave it at that then. So thank you today again for Deb and Helen for taking us through mental health in the new working world. And we hope to see you all again soon.
It's great. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, everyone, for attending. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.